our international speaker today, who's come from Warsaw in Poland to speak to us, Andrzej Zebrowski from the Polish anti-racist organisation United Against Racism. Andrzej.
Thank you. This really is a fantastic demonstration. So, if this is the second demonstration in Britain after London, that means that Chesterfield must have some 6 million people. It really is a privilege, and I'm very proud to be here with you. You also should be proud of yourselves. Now, many of you have heard about the Polish government, the Hungarian government, how right-wing they are, and none of it is an exaggeration. The Polish government publicly states that fascist organisations are merely patriotic groups of people, young patriots. The official line on refugees is a zero refugees policy. Zero. Not we're promising a few thousand but we won't do it, and we're promising nothing and we're sticking to it. That's what they want. Abortion, a vicious attack on women's rights. Poland has one of the worst abortion laws in Europe. And yet they tried to force through a couple of times, I'll say more later, a couple of times they tried to force through a law that will make a woman carry a severely damaged fetus to term, to birth. So we had an instance where that's been put into practice in the past, where in one hospital, a woman gave birth, she was forced, she wasn't allowed to have an abortion, she gave birth to a baby with half a skull and the brain hanging out. And that's the kind of politics that the government is pushing. So how can you win against such a government? I think we've had a couple of very good examples in the past. You may remember, because it got widespread publicity, in 2016 there was a huge protest called the Black Protest against the worsening of the abortion law. It was called the Black Protest because everybody dressed in black. So you'd go through the city and all the buses were full of people wearing black. School kids came out of school wearing black. They went to the massive demonstrations, about 30,000 people in central Warsaw. Up and down the country, there were lots of local demonstrations. Teachers who couldn't demonstrate would wear black in class. That forced back the government on that issue. They shelved it until this year, when the bishops again demanded that this law be passed. So the government is sucking up to the Catholic Church, and it tried to pass it through the parliamentary procedure. Again, people came out on the streets, and again they shelved the law. So that just shows that really the mass campaigning, getting people on the streets, is really what frightens any government. As far as racism goes, I've already said what the government line is. What's happened is that it really shows for me that racism is not a natural ideology because somebody looks different. It's an ideology that's pumped downwards from the top down to the rest of society. It's like a river of sewage that goes from high up right down to the ground. And I'll tell you why I know this. Because 2 years ago, the sympathy for refugees was like about 2 to 1 in opinion polls. Now it's been reversed by a systematic campaign, racist campaign, day in, day out on national television. Just before I left, the same old, same old. Europe wants refugees, we don't. We're not going to be pushed around by the European Union, who's making us take, which actually is not true. European Union is hopeless about refugees. People are dying in the sea, etc. So that's not true. But for them, it's too much. They don't want any refugees. So you had in November a massive, tens of thousands of people that came out, led by fascists, because of this policy of normalising fascism. But it's not all negative, because recently the fascists themselves, when it's not the special national day, they can't demonstrate in huge numbers. And we've managed to divert their marches a couple of times in a couple of cities. And also, last week on May Day, of all days, we blocked a fascist march in Warsaw. It could not get through. The other area where things are really hotting up at the moment is on the question of disabled people. Because there's a small group of disabled people and their carers, typically it's their mothers, who are currently occupying the corridors of Parliament. Now the government would like to kick them out, but obviously this would look awful with police coming in, carrying out people on wheelchairs outside. So there's a protest inside Parliament. Outside Parliament, we have pickets every day while they're there. This is the 20th day. These people with some of them quite severely disabled adult children, adult kids, if you can say that, they're sleeping on the corridors of Parliament and sleeping bags on mattresses. So the determination is incredible, and they're not giving up. I've seen that the demonstrations outside have been bigger and bigger. On Saturday we had the biggest one yet. There were about 2,000 people marching around Parliament, coming back, showing solidarity, saying we will win. Solidarity is our weapon. And the point of all these separate fights, if you like, is that they're not really separate. Because of the big abortion campaign, that infused enthusiasm, inspiration into the anti-racist campaign. And anti-racists and people who fought over abortion are now fighting over the disabled campaign. The things link up. You don't have to be a genius lecturing people saying these things are linked. People see they're linked. It's the same government that says you're politicising everything, whereas the government is deciding the priorities, and they don't think disabled people are going to man the army. They're not going to be very useful for exploitation, so they don't really care about them. They'll throw them in the bin. And one last thing about this is that I think we really need to get trade union involvement. That's why it was very good to see Len McCluskey here in all these campaigns. And also, we have to make sure that we build the left in all our countries, because, you know, you think you had problems here, the wave of Corbynism, the fact that on a demonstration like this, it's dominated by socialist left-wingers, etc., is something that's very precious, and you have to build on it. Because I'm living in a country right now where the main political opposition is neoliberals. So you have disgusting, very right-wing Catholic conservatives on one hand, and the main opposition is liberals. That's not a good situation, and I think we're gradually overcoming this because people can see that the government is strong because of the weakness of opposition. How can you have an opposition to say the disabled issue when neoliberals think any payments are a waste of money? Because that doesn't agree with their politics. Okay, just to end on this, I would like to suggest that we have these placards outside Parliament, and if you all agree, I can go back to Warsaw on tomorrow's picket. That's at 3 o'clock every day. And it says this, if you could, I don't know, maybe the President of the Trade Union Council will do this formally, but it says this: we support the disability campaigners occupying the Polish Parliament. And it says it in English and Polish.
Okay, Andrzej, what I want to do then is put that to this meeting as a formal resolution. Do we, the Chesterfield May Day Rally, send our solidarity greetings and support those disabled campaigners, disability campaigners, currently campaigning in the Polish Parliament? Show your solidarity here today. Support our Polish comrades and colleagues fighting for disabled rights, just as, of course, our campaigners do today. And I'll ask you to go here today to Chesterfield to the disability campaigners' stalls on our May Day market today. So a big round of applause for Andrzej for speaking today.